PATA is a network of practitioners working on pediatric HIV in sub-Saharan Africa. And we are broadcasting live from the summit, which has been taking place since Wednesday, the 16th of October, and is ending today on the 18th of October. The 2019 summit has been focusing on integration of HIV and sexual and reproductive health and rights for adolescents and young people. And if you did not see the webinars from the last 2 days, they're now available on childrenandaids.org. So the focus of the summit and of the webinar today is on community clinic collaboration in the context of HIV and SRHR integration. And we're very excited to be here today to share a selection of the presentations and the lessons related to this topic that we've learned about on this final day of the summit. I am Rika Kierkegaard, a program specialist on HIV/AIDS at UNICEF headquarters in New York. And with me today, I'm honored to have 3 speakers, as well as a co-moderator that will present highlights from day 3. We have Jessica Rodriguez from the AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition in New York. We have Immaculate Mutisia from CDC in Kenya. And we have Cedric Nininahazwe from Y+ in South Africa. The presentations would take around 45 minutes, followed by around 10 minutes for Q&A. And before we get started, I would like just to review a few guidelines about the webinar format. So first of all, if you have any trouble hearing or have any technical issues, please write us a message and we'll try to support as best as we can. Before writing us, please try and log in and out, check your audio settings or restart your laptop. Please do keep your mics on mute throughout the webinar and type in any questions at any point in the chat box. And please note that you can send questions either to all panelists, so the presenters, or to all panelists and attendees, which would be preferable so that everyone can see the questions that you've asked. And finally, just to note that this webinar is being recorded and all materials will be made available online after the webinar on childrenandaids.org. So please do share the link if any of your colleagues were not able to join us today. So now I'm very pleased to present our first speaker, Jessica Rodriguez from AVAC. I'm especially pleased to introduce Jessica since she used to be on the other side, or my side of this webinar. Jessica has more than 15 years of experience in program management and strategic information research and communications. She joined AVAC in 2018 as Director of Product Introduction and Access, where she oversees AVAC's flagship projects that support the scale-up of biomedical prevention products. Prior to joining AVAC, she worked at UNICEF headquarters in the HIV section, and before that she worked in Mozambique, where she was a senior manager for strategic information and communications for the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation. So Jessica, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rika, for that warm welcome, and it's really a pleasure to be here with UNICEF and at the PATA Regional Summit. So today I'm talking about let's not forget about prevention in clinic and community collaboration. And I'll first start off about why it's important to think about prevention. PATA is a network that's focused really on treatment of children and adolescents living with HIV. And so I'll kind of review why it's so important that we remember prevention as we're caring for and thinking about adolescents. And then I'll discuss the current situation with the rollout of OralPrep in the context of adolescents, and discuss how we can learn from those lessons in order to pave the way for the next generation of HIV biomedical products in order to provide more access to those who need and would benefit most from these tools. Next slide, please. So I wanted to kind of set the stage by kind of outlining why prevention is so important for adolescents. As many of you are familiar with many of the latest UNAIDS figures, adolescents continue to be infected with HIV at an alarming rate. Every week, 6,000 adolescents and young people are infected with HIV globally. And this is combined with a projected growth in the population of adolescents and young people aged 15 to 24 by the year 2050. And in sub-Saharan Africa, it's projected that this population will double by that time. And about 3/4 of new infections in adolescents, of new infections in the region are among adolescents and young people. And I think that really underscores why more than ever, prevention is really critical. And so we are, despite a lot of progress, we are still missing the target for reducing new infections among adolescents and young people. We're at about 190,000, where the 2020 target is 50,000. So we're far away from meeting that. One moment, please. We had a slight technical difficulty, but we'll be showing you the slides in one moment. So again, there are many millions of adolescents who are at risk of HIV, and therefore it's critical that we think about how to ensure that they have continued access to prevention. And the good news is that there are current tools available, OralPrep being one of them, VMMC, and condoms. And however, I will focus more on biomedical prevention products and options, and wanted to give a bit of an overview of where we are in terms of OralPrep uptake. 7 years after the FDA approved OralPrep, and about 5 years after WHO recommended OralPrep for those at substantial risk of HIV infection, there has been some progress in increasing the number of people who are in START PrEP. As of October 2019, according to PrEP Tracker, which is published by AVAC, about 370 to 375,000 people globally were initiated on PrEP. 3 countries, the United States, South Africa, and Kenya, have initiated more than 25,000. But still, we will miss the target of 3 million by 2020. And I wanted to highlight here that this data is not disaggregated by adolescent girls and young women. I think that also underscores the need to really advocate for more disaggregated data by age and gender, especially when it comes to PrEP. But it's also important to recognize that many programs are still in early phases of implementation, and as they mature, these data will hopefully become available. So while we see uptake is slow, it doesn't, and there might be some reasons for that because of the product itself, but there are also more systemic and structural reasons why oral PrEP uptake has not increased as much as we would have expected, and certainly is far behind meeting the 2020 target. And I'll talk about some of those as I go through the presentation. And I think one reason is that we need to address the multiple health needs of adolescent girls and young women in particular. Providing a biomedical HIV prevention product might not address all of those multiple needs. And I wanted to mention the ECHO trial because I think it underscores 2 things. One, the importance of HIV prevention given the high incidence found in the trial among all 3 groups of women who were using highly effective contraceptive methods. An incidence rate of 3.8% per year was reported, and so I think it's really, that serves to underscore again the importance of prevention, and also the kind of main implication is the need for effective HIV prevention and SRH integration. Next slide, please. And I think the good news is that despite some challenges with PrEP, and it's certainly easier to start PrEP than stay on PrEP, especially for adolescent girls and young women, I think the good news is that there are many new and diverse products in the pipeline that will expand the number of options, and hopefully that will translate into more choice for everyone, but and particularly for adolescent girls and young women. So this slide depicts the various products that are in the pipeline. The vaginal ring. There are different oral PrEP pills also in trials, with a possible dual pill that would combine oral contraception and HIV prevention in one pill. There are long-acting ARVs for prevention in the pipeline, including injectables and implants, as well as antibodies and preventative HIV vaccines. So it's hoped that some of these products will address the adherence challenges and challenges continuing on PrEP that we're seeing, particularly among adolescent girls and young women. Next slide, please. So in some, more products and options are not enough. By merely having a product won't deliver itself, and while product design and a clinical profile might improve uptake and continued use, a single product in isolation will not be able to address the underlying health systems challenges and the structural drivers of the epidemic. And really it means that all of these different players and stakeholders must be working together in order to accelerate and ensure effective introduction of new HIV prevention tools. It means putting the preferences and values of adolescent girls and young women first in order to inform the design of products and programs that truly meet their needs. It means governments having the evidence and information to make decisions around HIV prevention programs, implementers learning and scaling up based on what works, and what we learn feeding into the development and design of new products so that they're improved upon and meet the needs of those who would benefit from them most. So I wanted to kind of hone in on 3 specific lessons that I think are really important as we think about what worked for oral PrEP and what might be applicable to the delivery of next generation products. So one of those is listening to adolescents, better understanding their preferences, their motivations, specifically around seeking HIV services, and ensuring that those feed into programs and products and messaging that resonates with them. The third is the critical role of providers, and lastly, the need to increase community awareness in order to reduce stigma and normalize the use of PrEP. So I'm going to here talk a little bit about some recent research that AVAC has led through the Prevention Market Manager. And this end user research is really designed to understand the behaviors and motivations and values of adolescent girls and young women. And in South Africa, this slide depicts the inclusion criteria, and the main message and takeaway is that the adolescent girls and young women recruited for the research were from high prevalence districts and had individual risk factors, including sex without a condom in the past 6 months, 2 or more partners, and being aware that one of those partners had other partners. And as a result, this end user research generated some insights about the motivations of adolescent girls and young women in how they seek HIV prevention. There are many insights here. I won't describe all of them. I think the overarching one that is really relevant for our discussion today and throughout the summit was that adolescent girls and young women prioritize their relationship goals and really are more concerned with maintaining healthy relationships, and don't have a specific HIV prevention journey. They also want to prevent pregnancy and actively seek to do that, but seek to avoid or treat HIV. In addition, I think it's also important to mention that support networks for positive sexual health decisions are lacking. Having peers and influencers around them, family support in some settings can be also limited. And I think another important insight here, and why it's really important that we invest in developing more HIV prevention options, is that preferences toward prevention are not static over life. They change depending on an individual's lifestyle and life course, which may change as a person gets older. The research also conducted some segmentation work, which identified 3 distinct segments of adolescent girls and young women. And I think that the key takeaway here is that different adolescents have different relationship goals and values, and that programs and providers, if they understand that, can better target and tailor the programs and messages to communicate with adolescents and hopefully motivate them to use and take up HIV prevention and, for example, oral PrEP if they so choose. So this slide really outlines these different values that the different segment had, and adolescent girls and young women cannot be viewed as a monolithic group. We really have to understand each individual's specific needs and desires and goals. And I think this is heading into the last phase of our research, where we will develop tools for providers and programs in order to take these findings and insights and be able to apply them to change and improve their programs, so that the views of adolescents are embedded in the way programs are designed. I think the second key lesson is, how do we improve service delivery? I think a product can be safe and effective, but if the delivery mechanisms are not in place that will enable it to enable young people to access it, it will be very challenging to see increased uptake. And some of these challenges and potential solutions are really well known. Some of them are associated with the pill itself, side effects, the pill size, the need for discretion. Oral PrEP is often associated with taking ARVs, and is that contributing also to feeling stigmatized? So as providers, there's a need for proactive management of side effects, explaining them in advance, counseling with a focus on relationships. In terms of increasing awareness and providing adherence support, peer navigators and youth clubs can play a key role, as well as community dialogues and sensitization. And I also want to draw attention to this idea that sometimes as providers, some providers are not authorized to prescribe PrEP, and if we expand the number of providers that can, perhaps that will also help to improve and increase uptake. But some providers are reluctant to prescribe PrEP, fearing it will encourage clients to take on more partners, to forego using condoms, and maybe increase the risk of STIs. So it is important for providers to kind of reflect on their own biases and beliefs and attitudes that affect client interactions, and may cause them to hesitate to provide PrEP, even if they have the clinical knowledge and skill and management skills. So where does that lead us? I think it's really essential, if we're going to support the rollout of PrEP and also improve the introduction of new products in the pipeline, to strengthen clinic and community collaboration. Demand generation is really essential in order to explain and communicate the benefits of PrEP to providers, to influencers, to communities ahead of time, in order to reduce stigma and normalize the use and create more awareness and support. Healthcare workers are frontline advocates too, so it's important to advocate for the needs and the rights of adolescents who are seeking prevention services. And of course, as we've seen at the summit throughout the week, lifting up the voices of youth advocates and placing them in leadership roles is really important to seeing a long-lasting change. And in conclusion, I want to say that we cannot leave prevention out of the equation. Adolescent girls and young women and young populations are at risk, yet they're the least empowered to seek services, and we cannot afford to let them down. I want to reiterate that prevention is a part of HIV and SRH integration. We've done a much better job integrating treatment and testing into SRH and vice versa, but have not done such a good job with prevention. And finally, as we've seen in some places throughout the world, universal test and treat combined with high coverage of PrEP can lead to significant reductions in HIV incidence. And so in order to end the epidemic, we cannot forget prevention. Thank you everyone for your time and attention, and look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And speaking to your message of lifting up youth advocates, our next two speakers will speak even more to that. So our next speaker is Immaculate Mutisia from CDC Kenya. Dr. Immaculate is a pediatrician and public health specialist, works for CDC Kenya in the Division of Global HIV/AIDS and Tuberculosis. She has 11 years of experience in public health and clinical practice. And she is also the proud founder of OperationTripleZero for adolescents and young people living with HIV. And she was the recipient of the 2018 Excellence in Adolescent Health Award from Michigan, USA. So please, over to you, Dr. Immaculate.
Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. I will be speaking to self-health management and differentiated models of care and how we have successfully been able to foster my treatment, my life, my choice among adolescents living with HIV. That's the outline of my presentation, and I will go straight to the background. And just as a way of recap, just highlighting some of the adjectives that we have used to describe the plight of adolescents living with HIV. The first one is lagging behind. Often at times we describe them as a population that is lagging behind. When everybody else is benefiting from antiretroviral therapy, we still have gaps in terms of access and treatment outcomes for these populations. Adolescents are still dying despite treatment, and we continue to have unacceptably high new infections among adolescents living with HIV. And that moves me to my next slide, just to discuss then what do we need to shift from. And as having worked with adolescents living with HIV, one of the things that I believe as a program we can begin to shift from is focusing on adolescents as a problem to be fixed, but rather potential to be nurtured, and also rethinking our programming from deficit-based approaches to more asset-based programming. So when it comes to asset-based programming, what does it entail? And really is looking at the population in focus and identifying the strengths in this population. The second thing is to view them as co-producers, as part of the solution, as a potential, as opposed to designing programs that see adolescents as passive recipients and implementing programs that are an answer to the challenges that we face. So really just taking me to my next slide on self-health management, it is indeed an asset. And if we look at the pie of the core people that are involved in adolescent health, the healthcare worker, the caregiver, and the adolescent, the biggest pile lies with the adolescent. It doesn't matter how healthcare worker is trained, the level of education. It doesn't matter how caring caregivers are if the adolescent does not own their health, if the adolescent does not take charge. And having worked in a adolescent HIV clinic, one of the things that I notice is every time we engage with adolescents and fostered self-health management, there were results. And this is what led to the development and initiation of the OperationTripleZero as a program to reach more adolescents, to be more self-health health managers, and to be able to foster better treatment outcomes of their health. So what is OperationTripleZero as a differentiated model of care or service delivery for adolescents living with HIV? OperationTripleZero means zero missed appointments, zero missed drugs or medicines, and zero viral load. However, there are other zeros in there, which include zero mother-to-child transmission stigma, zero deaths, zero new infections, among others. So it's a program where we encourage adolescents to be self-health managers and to foster achievement of zeros that ultimately result to better treatment outcomes. This is a logo which is designed by adolescents, and it says 000 #AmAhero. And this is heavily borrowed from the motto which says heroes for zeros and zeros for heroes. It takes a hero to be a zero. So what is in the OperationTripleZero package? There are three components. There's the adolescent and young person package, which is the core. We start with the adolescent and ensure that they are well empowered, they understand their treatment, they stay connected, and they foster leadership and empowerment. We have the caregivers to ensure that caregivers are well trained to support adolescents to own their health. There's a tendency of caregivers to provide special care, to provide constant support without allowing effective transition for adolescents and young people with chronic illnesses. And it's not only unique to HIV, even in diabetes, asthma, and other chronic illnesses. So we encourage caregivers to really support adolescents to own their health. And lastly, we work on the healthcare worker to ensure that there is a competent healthcare workforce that provides not only adolescent-friendly, but adolescent-responsive services, while at the same time implementing an asset-based model within their clinics. So how does OperationTripleZero nurture the potential with the adolescents? And we look at the adolescent brain and see some of the assets that we tap into as OperationTripleZero. One is really the desire for identity. And we provide for these young people a defined group with very specific goals. This is a group that desires to be cool, and we provide for them a movement or a network of young people living with HIV who actually are proud of being heroes of their own health. The other things that we foster are quite a number, but one of the things I'd like to highlight is that adolescents uphold the opinions of peers and like to keep the company of peers. So what do we do in OperationTripleZero? We foster positive peer pressure, and we ensure that our adolescents stay connected. And lastly, adolescents love to be independent, they demand autonomy. So we put them in charge of their health. We work with them to develop self-health management, treatment plan with very clear goals of their viral suppression, with very clear plan of the timings they will take their medicines, and what plans they should have to ensure that they don't have any missed opportunities when it comes to treatment. And lastly, we ensure that there's adult leadership and guidance in the OTZ program by roping in caregivers, teachers, and healthcare providers. So what is the core component? What is the package that helps adolescents to own their health? One of the things that we train in the OTZ module is participation, ensuring that adolescents view themselves as part of solution and step forward and provide that solution. The second thing is comprehensive treatment literacy, that they know about their health, that they are in charge of their treatment. They have a positive outlook into the future, they stay connected. And above all, they can set their life goals and they can know that they can actually lead themselves and lead others. And lastly, that they are a force to reckon with. They can motivate and influence themselves as well as influence others. So in addition to the 3 zeros, we have packaged OperationTripleZero in a way that it takes care of the other 90s in the cascade, starting from the first 90 in terms of identification and linkage, moving on to the second 90, where we focus on adherence, treatment, optimization, PHDP, and TB. We have the third 90, where we focus on retention and viral suppression, especially linkage to community support, especially for OVC services and any other services that are not available within the facility. We have an OTZ class, which focuses on adolescents and young people who are breastfeeding and lactating. And the class is really targeted ensuring that the infant is HIV negative. And it's here where we provide a very comprehensive package for them, both maternal treatment and infant prophylaxis, as well as SRH and PHDP services. Moving on to the health systems component, we know that we can have a program without good systems. And key to this is ensuring that we have clinic days that favor adolescents. We have age band-based clinics where we can give age-specific information. And we have strategic information to monitor and track performance as we implement. In terms of cost implications, OperationTripleZero is very cost effective. And when we looked at the human resource for health and the other activities that we support, it's actually staff that we support in other programs. It is just refocusing this staff to really adopt and embrace an asset-based approach for them to be able to realize good treatment outcomes. How have we scaled up OperationTripleZero in Kenya and beyond? So we started off in 2017 with 71 adolescents. We are about 40,000 adolescents currently. And below there, those are some of the work for adolescents who have developed, just communicating that, if you want to upgrade your swag, then you join OperationTripleZero, making it a really cool thing to associate with and to identify with. And that has really resulted to very high snowballing effect with very high uptake and acceptability among adolescents living with HIV. We hosted a multi-country OTZ learning visit in November last year, with about 4 countries visiting, and some of these countries have begun OTZ adaptation, and we are working with them closely to scale up. What are the results of OperationTripleZero in terms of viral suppression? I'd like to present data for about 29,000 adolescents who are currently enrolled in OTZ by various implementing partners across Kenya. And what we see is that from a baseline viral load of 63%, we have a current viral load overall of 86%, with some partner recording over 90% viral suppression. And this is very promising. We are keen to support the 14% who are not virally suppressed because we know they represent young people and adolescents. We provide for those very case-based approach to identify the challenges and support them on a case-by-case basis. Moving on to site level analysis, what is very exciting and we are seeing from the program is in some sites, actually adolescents are either doing the same way as adults or they actually have better viral suppression, meaning that with OperationTripleZero, adolescents actually are leading the way. And noticeably is where they are not at the level with adults, then they are actually catching up with the adult viral suppression. So we strongly believe that self-health management does have a role in terms of, fostering change and transforming treatment outcomes for adolescents living with HIV. What are some of our successes? One very impressive success we've noticed is an improvement in viral suppression with a range of 10 to 39% for all programs that are implemented. The other thing is increased participation of the AY, adolescents and young people, enhanced positive outlook, self-esteem, and also how we've been able to tie in the core components of OTZ, specifically the healthcare workers and caregivers, and seeing how they've engaged and how they are happy when they see good results. It has not been without challenges. We've run into a couple of challenges. One of them is really ensuring that every program that implements OTZ actually implements with fidelity, and that's something we are working on to ensure that every program is actually implementing the basic package. Of course, there's increased data collection needs, sustaining regular engagement of these AYPs and transitioning some of our adolescents who turn 25 out of the OTZ clubs. In conclusion, we would like to say hazard-based approaches have a role in adolescent programming. We are convinced that if we scale best practices to scale, we begin to see country-level impact. And from the side-level data, it's convincing that adolescents an adolescent can truly lead the way. And we are watching this. Lastly, we agree with the adolescents that heroes are zeros and zeros are heroes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Immaculate, for sharing with us and really inspiring us to see how empowerment of adolescents and young people can lead to these very promising improved outcomes for HIV. So I would like to introduce our last, also very inspiring speaker, Cedric Nininahazwe from South Africa, who is a qualified lawyer and also the programs manager of the global network of young people living with HIV called Y+. Before this role, Cedric was the executive director of the Burundian network of young people living with HIV, RNJ+, where he produced the first ever report in Burundi on the challenges around HIV care and the issues of young people living with HIV. In 2014, Cedric led the establishment of the RNJ Plus Youth-Friendly Center for young people, particularly for young key populations, to access SRH services. And thanks to the achievements of this youth center, RNJ Plus won the 2016 Red Ribbon Award as an outstanding example of youth-led community HIV response. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over the floor to you to present.
Thank you so much. It's actually a pleasure to be on this webinar today, where I'll be sharing how young people are leading the way to service linkage, delivery, and advocacy on the front line. So actually, as you may know, one of the best practice in terms of reaching adolescent and young people is the peer support program, and based on that, we can accept and also agree that peer support has been leading the way in terms of linking services, but also making sure that their peers are getting services in the way that they wanted, but also creating a kind of safe space, but also supporting them for better outcome. So I do believe, as we agree that peer support are leading the way, and we all know that this is a kind of one of the facts that shows that young people are really leading the way. Another fact from our side at Y+ that show that young people are leading the way is the initiative that Y+ started in terms of engaging health providers, and this is what we call the Ready to Care scorecard, a scorecard that helped to collect information on the level of satisfaction of young people in HIV in terms of service provision. So this scorecard really helped to support the health facility to provide services that meet the white HIV needs, but also it initiate a constant communication between young people in HIV and their health providers. But then it's transformed the health facility in best places for young people in HIV, given that they have to go to the health facility at least once a month. In some cases, maybe once after quarterly. But then the the main thing about the scorecard is creating this communication, creating this conversation about what young people need, how do they want to be served when they get to the health facility, and how can the health providers take this information and transform, or maybe design the way that they're providing these services, but also include services that are being required by these young people. The scorecard can be downloaded on the Y Plus website, www.yplusnetwork.org. And just to give you an overview of how we have been using this scorecard and what kind of result came out from this the implementation of the scorecard, I'd like to take you through the case of Mozambique, where we implemented this scorecard. Just as a reminder, this is how young people in HIV are engaging with health providers, but also leading the way to improve service provision to adults and young people in HIV. So after the implementation of the scorecard, we got feedback, and then we analyzed the result from the scorecard. And this is one of the results that came out, saying that just over half of the clients, 51% say that providers listen to them without judgment and treat them with respect and don't talk about them to others. That's about 55%. So in addition to that, 56% of clients said providers always or mostly keep appointment brief and on time. And 62% said providers always or mostly make time to talk even when they are busy. So this kind of information are very useful when health providers are taking them into consideration when they are designing, or maybe when they're trying to improve the way they're providing services, but maybe also trying to improve the treatment outcome of young people living HIV. And on our side, yes, we use this information to engage with health providers, but we also use this information for advocacy purpose, because we also believe that yes, we need some change from the health providers, but we also know that some change need to be done from on policy, or maybe policy at policy level. And then we use this information as evidence for advocacy. So I would like to show you the way that we are doing our advocacy. This is one of our methodology we are using in one of our project that we are implementing called Ready Plus. So as you can see on the screen, so we have many I would say different stakeholders that taking part of the process. But the important thing here to understand is that we by having the peer supporters who are navigating through community and health facilities, supporting their peers, we create safe spaces. And then this connection, this conversation between peer supporters and their client, or maybe their peer that they are supporting, we collect evidence. We know what is going well and what is not really going well. And then we take this information to the country networks, because also we believe that peer supporters or young people in HIV, they need, aside of a safe space, they need constituency, a place where they can gather themselves together, try to exchange, and then discuss what are the priority issues, what are the things that we need really to be changed, and how can we address this. Once they have this in their constituency, as I mean, like in the network, Y Plus, we support them to build their leadership, to make sure that these issues are brought at the right place, also brought to the decision makers, or maybe program designer. So, and then we demand accountability in terms of, this is what we want, and once we have our commitment, we would like to see how are you committing, or how are you influencing change so that we can have better outcome for our health, but also better safe spaces, but also better health facility where we feel comfortable getting services. So just in conclusion, I know that many, so often young people are really raising their voice, advocating for adolescent-friendly services, but also trying to, advocate so that their health facility can be the place that they want. But at Y+, we also believe that it's not only about doing advocacy or maybe trying to have health providers as our target, if I can use the word. But we also believe that health providers are our partner, because we think that, as I said, within the philosophy of the scorecard, a constant communication between health providers and young people themselves is the best way to improve access to services, because they can understand what is not really going well, how can we improve, what do you want us to do, and how do you want us to behave as young people, but also as health providers. At the same level as well, we also believe that some challenge that young people meet, or maybe health providers, are beyond their control, which means they need to work together to see who can address these issues, who can address this challenge. The reason why this connection, this communication, or maybe this collaboration between adolescent and young people in HIV and health providers is one way of addressing these issues, but working as partners to address this issue. Maybe if it's like the government or policymakers that need to put better policies that address these issues, health providers, young people can work together to address these issues. So I will end up my my presentation quoting Windy Desco, saying that if you ever think you are too small to be effective, you've never been in bed with a mosquito. This is one of my favorite quote, just saying a little thing can make a big change in life of young people. And we also believe in teamwork. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cedric, for this excellent presentation and definitely food for thought. We now have up to 10 minutes for Q&A. So please type in any questions that you may have in the chat box using the all panelists and all attendees function. In the meantime, I would like to ask both Cedric and Immaculate, what would be your #1 advice to adolescents and young people living with HIV out there who want to be advocates and who want to strengthen clinic community collaboration around integrated services, HIV services, SRH? Immaculate, do you want to go first?
So I think for me, my first advice would be, it's really important for adolescents and young people to understand whether there's different issues that they want to advocate for. It's really important for them to be part of a constituency or to be part of a movement where they have support from their peers, so that their voice can be heard and it can be raised loudly. And the second thing is about to understand that sometimes it's about health providers, but also sometimes it's not about health providers. It means like if they want to advocate, they need to see where is the problem coming from and how can we address, and who can we work with to address this kind of issues. Say if it's about working a long distance to get the services, is it the health providers, or it's an issue that need to be addressed by government, for instance? Or if it's a stock out, is it the health provider or is it responsible of the health facility? So it's about where is the issue coming from, and who can we partner to address those issues.
So what I would tell adolescents who want to stand up and speak up and focus on championing for adolescent health, I would really urge them to foster what we call effective participation. And effective participation really entails, being very clear on what you want and, determining your role as an adolescent and moving away from demanding to providing the solution or giving suggestions of what can be done differently for us to be able to have an impact.
Thank you so much for sharing your advice. I'm now joined by our co-moderator, Dr. Shafiq Saji, who's head of programs at UNICEF headquarters in the HIV section. And Shafiq, I wanted to ask you, in the context of the discussions we've had the last 3 days on HIV and SRHR integration, and especially also in relation to clinic community collaboration today, at UNICEF, you're working on developing a framework for pediatric service delivery. Do you have some reflections on do you want to share a little bit about what this framework intends to do and how you see it connected to improvements in integration of HIV and SRHR services?
Thanks very much, Rike. Yes, indeed, we are developing a framework. It's a joint collaboration between UNICEF and many other global partners, including global funders such as PEPFAR and the Global Fund, as well as other funders that are important in the pediatric HIV space. And where this is coming from is a recognition that despite the fact that we have innovative tools like point-of-care diagnostics for infants, new drug formulations that are becoming available, including dolutegravir, which we should have by the end of the year, and the 4-in-1 formulation of lopinavir, we're still not seeing scale up of pediatric treatment and adolescent treatment at the rates that we had hoped for. We're far, far short of the targets that we wanted to reach. And we think that the problem lies in the lack of attention to service delivery, to how we actually collaborate together to improve the quality of the services that we provide and extend the reach of those services across the whole continuum of care. It's not just about treatment, it's about identifying those kids in the first place. It's about linking them to care, and then it's about ensuring that they stay in care and are retained on treatment. To do that, we need to identify best practices from the field, and we need to link them effectively to a sort of a gap analysis at country level that allows us to be differentiated in the way in which we respond to the issues at hand. There is no one-size-fits-all anymore. Countries need to look carefully at their epidemics, at the state of their programs, and determine where the problem lies in the continuum of care and for which age group that problem is most important. So what we're trying to do is develop a solutions matrix that can help countries in the context of this framework of thinking to identify those problems and link them to the solutions that we think are of highest priority to help address those. Now, in the context of this particular meeting and clinic community collaboration, as well as integration of SRH in adolescents, I think it's clear that we cannot achieve access to adolescent testing and adolescent treatment without taking an all-encompassing view of adolescent health. And chief among adolescent health issues is adolescent sexual and reproductive health. Those are the things that adolescents struggle with and need most help with. And I think if we want to do a better job of HIV prevention and HIV treatment among adolescents, we absolutely have to think about ways in which we can link HIV and SRHR into the way in which we deliver and optimize services. So the clinic collaboration toolkit, the C3 toolkit is, I think, a perfect example of the kinds of thinking and tools that we need to be promoting at facility level and within ministries of health in order to try to bridge that gap and try to find solutions to some of those specific targeted problems that are identified.
Thank you so much, Shafiq. There are very exciting developments going on on this framework, and we will share on the community of practice once there is more.
By the end of December.
By the end of December, hopefully. So please stay tuned. Thank you once again, Shafiq. We now have a question for Jessica from Fiona Mpungu. She says, one of the concerns that healthcare workers often have is that PrEP may lead to increased STIs and unplanned pregnancy. Has any work been done to find out whether there's any association between the use of PrEP and an increase in STIs and pregnancies?
Yes, that's a great question. And I think there's definitely more information about the association of STIs and PrEP use in MSM, for example, and less information available for adolescent girls and young women. However, there is some indication that adolescent girls and young women who start PrEP have high rates of STIs, and it's a risk factor actually for an eligibility criteria for starting PrEP. So many adolescent girls and young women are coming into clinics already with high rates of STIs. And there's also some sense that because STI screening is done more regularly, then is it a result of just greater reporting about STI diagnosis? And is that why there might be some increase in STIs that is seen that is observed among PrEP users? So it's kind of a chicken and an egg association, but that's also why counseling is so important when initiating someone on PrEP, to also explain that it will not provide protection against STIs or unplanned pregnancies, and that condom use is also important. And lastly, I'd also like to note, it's also for this reason why it is exciting that there are some new products in the pipeline that will address STI and HIV prevention, as well as provide contraception and HIV prevention in one pill or product. So I think that is coming in the future, hopefully. And I think that will also help to address some of these challenges.
Thank you, Jessica. And just to make a note on that, in this Learning Collaborative, we're actually planning to focus more on PrEP and have an upcoming webinar on that. So we're very excited to hopefully be sharing some more on the evidence around this topic. But for now, I would like to conclude our Q&A and this webinar. As always, we will post a PowerPoint and a recording of the webinar on the childrenaids.org website later today. And this webinar also concludes our live 3-day webinar series from the PATA Regional Summit in Johannesburg. If you would like to know more about PATA and the contents and outcomes of this workshop, do check out teampata.org. And please do read the upcoming summit report. And then finally, I would like to thank our 3 speakers, as well as Shafiq, for sharing their presentations, for speaking a bit about the framework, for answering questions. So thank you very much to everyone for tuning in today, and have a great rest of the day.